here's the part of the story that most people don't even know. A fax comes through from Sony Music, signed by Tommy Mottola, offering $2.2 million, $400,000 more than EMI. And I remember having a conversation with my attorney. Everybody was excited. And I said, no, I want to sign with EMI. And they were like, what? You just got offered $400,000. Let's at least go back to EMI and tell them that we got a bigger offer from Sony. I said, no. I just want to sign the deal that was offered to me by EMI. And I like Brian Jackson. I love the fact that he has a passion for what I do and he spent time with me. And I want to get this deal done today. And I closed that deal that next day. And I never forget getting a call from Tommy Mottola cursing me out about not doing this deal with him. Literally cursed me out. I'm literally 17 years old and he cursed me out. I've always believed that it's not always the biggest deal, that's the best deal.
Welcome to In Search of Excellence, which is about our quest for greatness and our desire to be the very best we could be, to learn, educate, and motivate ourselves to live up to our highest potential. It's about planning for excellence and how we achieve excellence through incredibly hard work, dedication, and perseverance. It's about believing in ourselves and the ability to overcome the many obstacles we all face on our way there. Achieving excellence is our goal, and it's never easy to do. We all have different backgrounds, personalities, and surroundings, and we all have different routes on how we hope and want to get there. My guest today is Rodney Jerkins. Rodney is one of the most successful music producers of all time. He has worked with some of the greatest artists of all time, including Michael Jackson, Rihanna, Beyonce, Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande, Alicia Keys, Sam Smith, Katy Perry, Jennifer Lopez, Britney Spears, Whitney Houston, and Mary J. Blige, just to name a few. Collectively, the records he has produced have sold over 1 billion albums. He's been nominated for 18 Grammy Awards and has won 2 for Record of the Year and Best R&B Song, and he's also an incredible songwriter and musician in his own right. Rodney, thanks for being here. Welcome to In Search of Excellence.
Thank you for having me.
I always start my podcast with our family because from the moment we're born, our family helps shape our personality, our values, and the preparation for our future. You were born and grew up in Pomona, New Jersey, a small town 15 minutes away from Atlantic City in New Jersey. Your dad was a pastor at a church, and your mom was a housekeeper for a wealthy family in southern New Jersey. Can you tell us about the relationship you had with your parents, your mom's serious illness when she was pregnant with you, Mr. Tamborelli, and your dad's house rule?
Yeah, growing up in a small town, Pomona, New Jersey, very small town. My mother, when she was pregnant with me, I'm the fourth child, the last child. And when she was pregnant, she was just super ill. She was super sick. And there was a moment when she went to see the doctor. His name was Dr. Kwan. And Dr. Kwan basically told her that he didn't believe that I would make it. And my mom, who was a woman of faith, said, no, he's going to make it. And he will be blessed. And as sick as she was, the time came when she had me. And I never forget Dr. Kwan was my doctor for, probably first 12, 13 years of my life. And he would always tell me that story about how sick my mother was and him not believing I would be here. So he said, you have a special gift. You are gifted. You're a blessed boy. So he used to tell me all the time. And, so I don't take life for granted, especially now with myself having 4 kids. When I think back, of my mom, when she worked at, she worked for a wealthy family, several wealthy families. So not just one house. This was a journey for years for her. And I would go there to one of the family's homes to visit. Sometimes she would take me and they would allow me to swim in their pool with the other kids. But this one particular family, they always had the piano. There was always piano lessons being taught to their kids. And my mom one day, had the courage to ask the piano teacher, his name was Carl Tamborelli, if he'd be willing to give me piano lessons. And at first, kind of caught him off guard because she was the housekeeper. And, so I'm sure he probably thought she wouldn't be able to afford the lessons, but she was relentless in asking him. We grew up in a very gospel house. He was a classical piano teacher. She wanted me to learn classical piano. So he said yes. Eventually he said yes. And he gave me my first piano lesson, and I stuck with him for about 8 years. I started piano lessons with him at 5 years old, and was learning a lot of classical music up until the time where he couldn't teach me anymore. He said that I had went too far, that he had that I was kind of just progressing in my own world of creating my own songs. So he felt he couldn't teach me anything anymore, and that was pretty much it.
Tell me about the house rule that your dad had.
Well, my dad's a pastor. He's right now my dad's about to turn 80 years old, and he's been a pastor probably, I don't know, maybe he started preaching when he was 21 years old. So that's a good 59 years right there as a preacher. So he had this house rule that we were not allowed to listen to rock and roll music, is what he called it. What he meant was secular music. We weren't allowed to listen to pop, R&B, rap, anything. He called it rock and roll. It all came under that umbrella. So around our house, all we heard was gospel music. We heard gospel and classical, and that was it. It's all I heard as a kid coming up. But of course, most kids at some point are rebellious. So, me being rebellious, I would sneak and listen to a lot of music, whether it was, Michael Jackson, or whether it was like, Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick, hip hop on the hip hop rap side. I just listened to a lot of R&B, New Jack Swing, pop. I would sneak it, and I would actually try to figure out how to play the chords that I was hearing on the piano. I got in trouble a lot of times. My mom and dad would find cassette tapes around the house of, artists like Guy and Michael Jackson and Prince, and, just a lot of different artists that I was sneaking. And it was a house rule. It was this: you can't listen to this type of music. It's the devil's the devil's music is what they would refer to as. And the funny thing about this whole story was when I turned probably 10 years old is when I really started wanting to become a producer. And I just had a natural knack for creating tracks in that pop, hip hop, R&B space. And so eventually, by the time I'm 13, I was actually making songs, local records for local artists in South Jersey. And I was getting paid to do their demos. And eventually my dad, who initiated that rule, he became my manager. So he had to kind of go back on his own word and his own teaching. And now he had to manage my career.
I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but before we jump back in, I want to know if you've ever thought about what you need to do to reach the next level of success in your life. Over the last 25 years, I've been an advisor to more than 50 companies. I've invested nearly 100, including Google, Lyft, and Seagate. And I also co-founded a company that today is worth more than $15 billion. I've been incredibly blessed in my journey, and at this stage in my life, I want to give back. I want to share the lessons I've learned so you can reach incredible success way faster than I did. In my own journey, I've learned that having the right mentor is a massive advantage to achieving our goals. I'm hugely passionate about mentoring others, and I'm looking for a few hungry entrepreneurs who are excited to take action on their journey to incredible future success. So if that's you, I've got an opportunity. In the description of this video, there's a link where you can apply to work with me. All you need to do is answer a few simple questions, and if you're a good fit, my team will reach out so we can build a game plan together. All right, now let's get back to the video.
That's awesome. Let's go back, because you're 5 years old and you didn't want to take piano lessons, but your parents made you do that. I I know so many parents who force their kids to take piano or music. I know you force your kids to take piano, and they all play different instruments as well. Should we be forcing our kids?
Yes.
And in your case,
Sure, why not?
if your dad didn't force you, would you be a massive global producer superstar if they hadn't forced you? Would you have found it anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely forced it, and I'll thank them to this day for forcing it on me, because I wouldn't have been a producer for sure. I wouldn't have pursued production at all if it didn't start with me on the piano. I wouldn't have been a songwriter if it didn't start with me on the piano. When I think about our kids, I have, my kids are very musically inclined. My oldest son, he's more into golf, and that's really his thing. So, piano, sometimes he doesn't really want to play piano as often as the other kids do. But my wife and I, our thoughts on that is, we just want you to be able to exercise different parts of your brain. It's not a thing where, you have to play the piano just because you're living under this roof. But we would like for you to play the piano because we believe that it definitely exercises another part of your brain. And to me, I think there's nothing more beautiful than, if you want to play golf and you're 25, 30 years old, you're playing golf, and at the end of the day, you invite people over to your home and you start playing the piano beautifully for someone. I think it's just it's an extra bonus to be able to have that under your belt. So I stand by it. I encourage most parents and friends, like, yeah, you should get your kids piano lessons. It's a great instrument to learn. It's a great instrument that will help you work your brain in a different way and open up your creative juices and creative thoughts.
You mentioned your dad finally came around. He knew that you had a talent. He eventually became your manager. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But so many parents I know make awesome sacrifices for their kids. I know a lot of single moms, people who come from low socioeconomic means. They don't have funds. They can't take the private piano lessons. Your dad did something really amazing. He broke his life insurance policy to buy you a $1,200 drum machine. Can you talk about that and put your head back in the exact time frame when he did that? How much did that influence you and spark you to have your parents say, I believe in you at such a young age?
Yeah, it was such a special moment for me because I was 12 years old. I'll never forget it, because at this time, at 11 years old, I had got my first job. I was working at a local Foot Locker in the Hamilton Mall. Guy by the name of Doug Smith gave me my first job, and I had saved up a little bit of that money to buy this little small drum machine that was like $110 at the time. But I used to read all these magazines. Back then, it was like these Word Up magazines and Black Beat and these hip hop magazines, and it always has these articles about producers and the actual hardware that they used to use. So I would read, like, they would use, the Yamaha SY-77, the SP-1200, and all the producers that I liked, they used what was called the Akai MPC-60. And I just thought that if they use that, and they're super successful, that if I got that, then I would become super successful. And so I found when it was a magazine out of Pennsylvania it was called Trading Times. It was a little newspaper called Trading Times. And I would read it, and I would go to the for sale section of music in the music category. And there just happened to be an MPC 60 for sale for $1,200. And I showed my father, and he knew how bad I wanted this machine. He said, all right, let's take a ride. So we went to Pennsylvania one day, and Pennsylvania was, it was a good hour and 40-minute drive from where we were. And we took this drive, and the guy was selling this MPC 60, and my dad tried to talk him down. And he said, no, sir, I've already brought it down from $1,400 to $1,200. So that's the price. So my dad said, can I put it on layaway? and the guy said, I'll tell you what, I can't put it on layaway per se, because I'm not a store, but I'll take it off of the market for 1 week. If you really want it, you got to be back here in 1 week to get this. And so I asked the guy, could I make copies of the manual? There was a manual, owner's manual. And he said, yeah. And we went to like the local Kinko's down the street and literally Xerox 80 pages of this manual. I took this manual back home, and I kid you not, I read every single day. I was reading every day this manual on how this machine operates with no belief that I was getting this machine, by the way, right? But with belief one day I would have that machine and I would know it. So to my surprise, a week later, or like literally 1 week goes by, and my dad bought the machine, and he said, I believe in you. I believe in you so much that I borrowed the money. I borrowed the $1,200 off of my life insurance to get you this machine. And I turned that machine on, and I'm telling you, Randall, I was programming in literally the first 5 minutes. I knew the machine. I had read so much in 1 week that I literally knew how to operate the machine. I probably could operate it to this day with my eyes closed. And I just appreciate my dad so much for taking that leap of faith. He did make me sign a 1-page contract that said I would pay him the $1,200 back. I'm sure I paid him like $1.2 million back over time. But yeah, I mean, he taught me, that it was a transaction. But it was just a blessing to know, like, that relationship between a father and son, that a father had that type of belief in his son at such an early age.
I've said this before on my show so many times. I think the 4 of the most important words in the human language are "I believe in you," and it's something I say to my kids all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same with my kids. We all are born with something. We all are. We all have a gift. We all have something special inside, and sometimes we just need to hear a voice or someone tell us that we're special and tell us that they believe, in order for us to believe in ourselves even that much more.
You knew what you wanted to do when you were 10 years old, which I think is very unusual. Could you tell us about visiting your family in Toledo, Ohio, and being at a shopping mall with your cousin Sonia when Michael Jackson's Human Nature started playing on the sound system, which was a song from his Thriller album, which had just been released, and how that changed your life forever?
Oh, absolutely. I never forget that moment, going to Toledo, Ohio to visit my family, my Aunt Ann and my cousin Sonia, my cousin Bushy, and just, being out there and going to this local mall. And it just so happened the timing of us being there was the timing of Michael Jackson's Thriller album coming out. And I was walking through the mall and Human Nature was playing over the speakers. And when I heard that song and heard the quality and the production of that song, and of course, Michael's vocal ability, it just sparked this moment of, that's what I want to do. I want to make music, and I want to work with Michael Jackson someday. Like, I would literally tell everyone that I'm going to work with him someday. And I couldn't wait to like just get going, at such a young age, get going to figure out what that looked like, what creativity would become. Studying how they made these records and what kind of sounds. I would listen to songs and I would try to decide what that sound was that I was hearing without anyone telling me. So I would hear the bells and say, okay, I need to find a sound that sounds like a bell. I would hear, if it wasn't a piano, it was a Rhodes. Okay, I need to find a sound that sounds like a Rhodes. Strings. Well, I can't afford a live orchestra, but I can try to manipulate my string sounds to sound as close to an orchestra. So I would do it in its parts, the cello first, and then I would do the violins and just creating what I was hearing, recreating what I was hearing pretty much. But that moment it really changed my life, because hearing the production of Quincy Jones, you know, bar none, one of the greatest producers, if not the greatest producer of all time, it just inspired me to want to go and to a level that I knew was conceivable. Like I never had a doubt. That's the thing about me. Even at 9, 10 years old, I knew what I wanted to do, and there was no doubt I was going to do it. No one could tell me differently. I just knew it. I just like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to produce these artists, and I'm going to change the world through my music. And I've always been goal driven from day one, and I set it out. I set the goals out, and then I just go after it.
You've mentioned before in prior podcasts, talking with some of your friends, that specific moment blew you away. My question to you is, when we're choosing careers, is that the signal and the criteria we should all be looking for, that we should all be blown away? And I think at 10 years old, it's pretty rare. So what's your advice to us if we don't have it at 10 years old? And what's your advice to us if we don't have it at 30 years old?
Wow. I mean, I can't tell everybody's going to get it at 10 years old. I can't tell you everybody's going to get it at 20 years old or 30 years old. But my belief is that there's always something there for us to go after, for us to achieve in life. We don't always see it right away. And I'm noticing that even as I grow in my craft and become better in my craft, there's still other things that I want to accomplish. There's still other things that I want to do, right? So you never stop dreaming. You never stop believing in what your abilities are. I believe TV and film is something that I want to do next. So in fact, I will do it, because it's just, I would never tell myself that I can't. I believe that with God, all things are possible. So I'm going to go after whatever goal that I set out for myself. And I encourage other people to do the same. I believe if there's something that, I think life speaks to you in that kind of way, it kind of tells you what you're supposed to do, right? It's just something, a feeling that we all get, right? That I should be doing this podcast right now. I'm sure you had, when you were contemplating what do you wanted to do, there's a feeling that just takes over. I should do a podcast. I want to interview. It's just, and that's what everybody gets a feeling. Not everybody goes after the feeling, and that's the problem, right? You have to go after what you feel.
You said that you knew at age 10, and you knew you're going to want to do no matter what, and you went after it. So you're from South New Jersey, and we'll go through all of the stepping stones to your career, which are just fascinating, but you're in a small town in Southern New Jersey. There's no music scene growing up. You want to work with Michael Jackson. You did achieve your dream, and I can't wait to talk about that. But if you just think about it, most people would say, hey, Rodney, that's never going to happen. It's too far. It's a dream. Sure, everyone wants to work with Michael Jackson. So what's your advice to everybody out there who's saying, I want to win a Grammy, an Oscar, I'm going to go be the next Michael Jackson, or have these dreams that most people would think are impossible to achieve?
It's funny you reference Michael Jackson, because when I worked with Michael, I had a chance to visit the home that his parents had in Encino. They called it the Havenhurst home. And I went to this home, and I would see all of these pictures and writings on the wall all around the house that would say, dream the impossible dream, or you can reach the unreachable star. I would see all of this. And then I've been to Neverland, and I would see the same type of things. And I would say, if you instill that in someone's mindset at a young age, I feel like it will kind of settle in that the world that looks so big is not so big after all, right? And so what may seem not reachable, it could actually be reached because it could be one phone call or 1 second or 1 mile or one handshake or one relationship away. So I'm not going to tell you everybody is going to maybe the person watching may not, they may want to work with, Adele, right? And their dream is to work with Adele. And if that doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that you can't work with the next Adele or the next person who's just as great or will be just as great. But if you don't have any type of goals, then you're not living life. If you're not putting goals in front of you, then you're just swinging through life. And that can't be the mentality. The mentality you have to set goals for yourself, and you have to tell yourself, I can, and I will accomplish these certain milestones, these things that need to be reached in life. I'm not a driver. I can't tell you I like to drive, right? I'm not a person who, maybe I got spoiled early on in my career by car services and those different things and buses and limos and all that stuff, right? So I can't tell you I don't like to drive. But my wife said one day, she goes, I want us to do a family road trip. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, am I going to hire a driver and we're going to go across the country? She says, I want us to do a 40-day road trip, but I want you to drive, And when I started looking at the map and I started writing the notes down of how the distance was from one state to another, it looked very scary to me, to be honest, because I can't tell you that I like to drive, and it looks scary. But then one day I woke up and I said, for my wife and my kids, I'll drive to the ends of this earth. And I made it a goal to accomplish that 40-day road trip. And I've done it twice now in the last couple of years and got another one coming again this year. So I just believe if you set out what you want to do in life, you can accomplish it. I really believe that.
This episode of In Search of Excellence is brought to you by Sandee.com, SANDEE.com. We're a Yelp for beaches and have created the world's most comprehensive beach resource by cataloging more than 100 categories of information for every beach in the world, more than 100,000 beaches in 212 countries. Sandee.com provides beachgoers around the world with detailed, comprehensive, and easy-to-use information to help them plan their perfect beach getaway at home and abroad, and to make sure you're never disappointed by a beach visit again. Plan the perfect beach trip today by visiting Sandee.com. That's www.sandee.com. The link is in our show notes. Stay Sandee, my friends. Are you looking for your next great gift to surprise a friend, colleague, or loved one? Bliss Beaches makes the perfect gift. This best-selling bright and beautiful coffee table book by Randall Kaplan features stunning drone photography from exotic beach locations around the world. It's the perfect housewarming gift, a great addition to any home or office, and a fun and creative alternative to bringing a bottle of wine to somebody's house for dinner. Bliss Beaches is available for purchase on Amazon, where it has glowing reviews and a 5-star rating. Get your next amazing gift and order a copy of Bliss Beaches by clicking the link in our show notes. So you're 10 years old, you're making demos for people in the neighborhood, and you said, okay, I've got a gift. Not only did you know you had a gift, people in the neighborhood knew you had a gift. So walk us through what happened from 10 to 12. And then each year you've had just milestone after milestone. But I want to take it slow. You're 10 years old. You're getting $35, I think, per demo tape. I think you're working as a dishwasher somewhere to have some extra money to go to New Jersey. Maybe you can just tell us about all that, which is just a phenomenal, fascinating story in itself.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I wanted to be able to buy my own equipment, really. This is kind of like pre-MPC 60, my dad, and I just wanted to get like some things to create. So there was a local diner right around the corner from my home called the Pomona Diner. And we would go to this diner for soup and things. And one day I just got, bold enough to ask for a job. And they gave me a dishwasher job in the back. They knew who I was because we came. It wasn't a lot of money, and it was very dirty back there and filthy washing those dishes. But I wanted to buy my own equipment so bad that I was willing to take that step. One day I was bold enough to walk into the mall in 1988. I was 11 years old. And I walked in the mall and I walked in the Foot Locker. And I ran it out. The guy who was the manager of the chain of Foot Locker, the regional chain, his name was Doug Smith. And I walked in and I asked Doug Smith for a job. And at first he was like, "You're too young. You can't have a job. What are you talking about? It's against the law. It's against the law to have a job." And I said, "Please, sir, I just want to be able to buy some equipment for myself and I make music." He said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I tell you what, you could work in the back stocking boxes and I'll pay you myself." And so I stocked boxes and he would pay me he would pay me pretty much under the table. And believe it or not, Doug Smith is a really good friend of mine now. And I hadn't seen him since I was 11 years old, and I bumped into him last year. He runs the golf clinics that my son actually play in, which is crazy. And and we cried together when we saw each other and talked about these stories. But I say that to say it's just a matter of having the thought process to succeed. And I don't know why at that age, at such a young age, I wanted it so bad, but I didn't want to be a burden to my parents. I knew they didn't have. And so I figured if I could have a little bit of drive to just go out and I don't care if it was I used to watch my brother, by the way. I used to watch my brother who was 7 years older than me. I would have watched him sell M&Ms, right? So I would see like, oh, wow, he bought this box of M&Ms for, 10 cents a pack of M&Ms and he sells them for $1. That's a 90-cent profit. And I watch him do it over and over again. And I was like, okay, I want to make music. And I know it could be profitable at some point for myself if I put my heart into it and put my all into it. And if not, I'm still winning because I just love to make music. And my music can make you smile, can make you cry, can make you dance, it can make you have a good time. And I love what I do. And that's just what I wanted to do with my life. In school, I was known for that. Like in 7th and 8th grade, middle school, I was known as the kid who brought a beat machine to school and made beats at lunch cafeteria time and would get on the podium on the microphone and start rapping. Like I was known in school for that. Everyone knew me for trying to make people have a good time.
So you're socially mature at this age because you're dealing with people older than you. You're making music for people. I'm sure you had a lot of confidence yourself. But walk us through. You're going to New York City on a bus, and I want you to talk about standing outside of Polygram Records and Mercury Records and handing cassette tapes to people as they're walking out who look like they're in the music business. Now, you hear about this happening all the time. You hear about Scooter Braun and Usher in the studio and where you're living now, Atlanta, just going up and kind of waiting to go up to people. And you hear about people sending tapes to people or giving them tapes, and no one wants to hear it. They take it, thank you, they throw it away. You had a lot of guts going up and doing that at a young age. Can you tell us about that and what the thought process was? And I want to also ask about how important cold calling skills are to our success.
Yeah, I think, I was a little bit later, probably around 15 years old is when I started like having the courage, 15, 16 years old, having the courage to get on the New Jersey Transit bus, and take that 2.5-hour bus ride, go to Manhattan, go to 49th, go from Port Authority, which was on like 42nd Street, and go to 49th and 8th Street, which was where the Polygram building was, where Mercury Records was. And across the street, I'll never forget, was the Days Inn Hotel. And I would go outside and I would wait around, lunch hour or after work time was over. And I would go and I would have cassette tapes of, that said Rodney Jerkins demos. And I would wait to see anyone who looked like an executive that had a button-up shirt and suit on or whatever. And I would ask them, were they A&R? And I would give my tape. And I would watch certain people walk around a corner and throw the tape in the garbage can. I literally saw that with my own eyes. And it made me and it wasn't, it wasn't anything wrong with that because, by the way, you're not supposed to solicit music to people. That's how lawsuits are created, right? So I didn't learn that till later on. I used to just think, whoa, these people, these people are really mean-spirited people to throw my music away. They don't even know what they're missing right now. That's how I would think. But eventually, I tell you, what's really crazy is one day I'm home, and this is how when everything just was really interesting. I sent a cassette tape to an A&R director at Uptown Records by the name of James Jones. And I had read his name on the back of a Mary J. Blige album. And I sent this cassette tape with this cheesy letter attached that said, hi, James, I'm a music producer, da, 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 da. Anyway, his assistant at the time, a guy by the name of Federico, he would take any tapes that they get and he'd throw them in a box because they would not take solicited material. And James said it was something about this particular envelope that made him open it up. And he opened up this envelope and he listened to my cassette tape. And next thing you know, my father and I are on our way to New York in 24 hours to meet with James Jones at Uptown Records because he loved the music so much. In fact, he loved the music so much that I ended up moving to Hackensack, New Jersey at 16 years old to stay with James Jones and work on music for all the artists that he was working on.
So the cold calling worked, but he also told you, hey, I want you to drop out of school. So what was the decision like with your parents and your dad? Number one, you're living with a man you barely know in Hackensack, New Jersey. So he's letting you do that. And two, you're dropping out of school. And I'm curious what the conversation there was. And I also want to ask you, would you ever let your own kids drop out of school to do something like this? And how important is education to our future success?
Yeah, so the conversation between myself and my father went a little like this. Dad, this is an opportunity for me to, live out my dream, at least start my dream. I know what I want to do with my life. I want to be a producer, whether I finish school or whether I go to college. This is something that I foresee myself doing for the rest of my life. And my dad was a little apprehensive at first, but he knew where my heart was and what I believed in, and he allowed me to go after that. I would not do the same thing with my kids. I'm sorry, I would not. I love my dad for doing it, but I would not do the same thing. I believe education is so important. I believe that I want all my kids to do everything that I didn't do, by the way. So I would love for them to graduate high school and go to college, get their degrees. They're way smarter than me anyway already. They already have a great head start because they're super smart and intelligent kids. And I would tell that to anybody, education is super important. I never really believed in the plan B for myself. It was always plan A. Music was what it was going to be. But I just think that education is part, I look now, I'm naturally smart. I'm naturally just have a gift of understanding. But I will admit that you need education as part of music. So a lot of things I learned throughout the years was because I did the research after the fact that you need math. You need math to be a great producer and engineer. You need math. You need history to learn about what came before you and why does it matter now, right? And so a lot of times I go look back and I'm like, man, if I would have just stayed that extra year, you know what I mean? It would have been super beneficial to me, even more so. I believe in my success. I really believe that. But it is what it is. You can't go back and I can't go back and correct that. But I do know through my kids I can correct it. So I will encourage my kids to go as far as they can go in education.
We're going to come and talk about Teddy Riley in a minute, but before we do, Now you're 16, you're having success. People love your stuff. You actually had tried to get another band to listen to their music. I think Tommy Tunes or something. They didn't. We'll get into the Teddy Riley story in a minute, but I want to talk about people are pursuing you now to sign in record deals. EMI, there's a guy named Brian Jackson, A&R guy who's spending a lot of time with you, and you're 17 years old, about to turn 18 years old, and the guy wants to give you $1 million deal. And then you got Tommy Mottola, who at that point was one of the gods, if not the god of the music business, along with Clive Davis and a few other people who said, no, man, I want you to sign with us. And I guess there's a little bit of a bidding war going on, and Tommy Mottola is a big deal. He's a huge deal. I don't know if he was married to Mariah Carey at the time or if that came later, who had, she at that point was a superstar, maybe the number one superstar in the world. But you got Tommy pursuing you, and then you have EMI pursuing you. You signed with EMI, and the reason you signed with them is because Brian Jackson took the time to spend time with you that Tommy didn't. So can you tell us, first of all, I have a multi-part question here. How crazy is it that you're 17 years old and you're going to sign $1 million deal as a music producer, and you've got two people bidding on you? And can you tell us also, why is it sometimes the best option not to go with the highest option and the most money?
Yeah. So when I was 17, so actually it was a $1.8 million deal. It all added up to $1.8 million. And the guy from EMI, his name was Brian Jackson. And Brian, how I met Brian was through my attorney at the time. His name was Brad Rubens. And Brad, he was the one that said he felt that it was time for us to seek a publishing deal. And so he had a relationship with Brian Jackson, and he introduced me to Brian. And Brian would catch the train to Atlantic City 2-3 times a week. He would come in my basement of my parents' home with wires hanging all over the place and crates and all types of, keyboards on crates. And it was just crazy, this crazy room. And he would sit there and watch me for hours, create for hours and hours, and talk to me about how good he thought I was, and talk to me about how I could become better, and talk to me about so many different things music related. And so I decided I'm going to do a deal with EMI. Then, I met his team, Marty Bandier and Evan Lamberg and Jody Gerson and everybody at EMI. And I end up going to New York and meeting everyone. The day before closing the deal, I get a call from my attorney saying that Sony has now come to the plate. Like, what? What are you talking about? Sony coming? Tommy Mottola himself has interest in you and wants to get you on the phone about you coming to Sony. Here's the part of the story that most people don't even know. We had a fax machine in the house, and a fax comes through from Sony Music, signed by Tommy Mottola, offering $2.2 million, $400,000 more than EMI. And I remember having a conversation with my attorney. Everybody was excited. And I said, no, I want to sign with EMI. And they were like, what? You just got offered $400,000. Let's at least go back to EMI and tell them that we got a bigger offer from Sony. I said, no. I just want to sign a deal that was offered to me by EMI. And I like Brian Jackson. I love the fact that he has a passion for what I do, and he spent time with me. And I want to get this deal done today. And I closed that deal that next day. And I never forget getting a call from Tommy Mottola cursing me out about not doing this deal with him. Literally cursed me out. I'm literally 17 years old, and he cursed me out about not doing this deal with him. But I went with my gut, and I had no regrets, because, just because it's bigger money doesn't always mean it's the right deal. right? Just because there's 400, that there's you got to pay attention to the details, the small print. It could be bigger money, but it could be longer years. It could be bigger money, but not the best relationships at the time. That I would have had a champion like Brian, who was with me in so many sessions when I wrote The Boy's Mind, and when I worked on Don't Only Be a Player for Joe, when I worked on I Can Love You for Mary J. Blige, so many sessions. This guy was right here on the side, just how he was with me in the basement. He was the guy that took me to meet Clive Davis. I wouldn't have met Clive Davis and worked with Whitney Houston if it wasn't for Brian Jackson personally taking me to meet Clive Davis at 17 years old. So, I went with my gut, and I've always went with my gut. I've always believed that, it's not always the biggest deal. That's the best deal.
I know a lot of successful people who make money and they buy their parents a house when they get older and they can afford it. And it's a crowning achievement, a great moment in people's lives. I think the highlight of the child's life, and it's the highlight of the parent's life. Oh, I'm so proud of my daughter or my son being able to do this, and so generous. It's just one of the most beautiful things that you read about. You did it, and you bought your parents a house when you were 17 years old. What was that like, and what were you thinking at the time? And looking back, what are your thoughts about it now, trying to put your self back 17 years ago, looking back?
Oh, it was something I was going to do regardless. It was something that when I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, I can't remember, but I wrote a poem to my mother. And in that poem, I told her I was going to buy her house. And when I was 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, there was a new neighborhood, and my dad and mom would take us and ride us around that neighborhood. And I don't know, one day I was like, they're going to live in this neighborhood. We're going to live in this neighborhood. And when I got my publishing deal, the first thing I did was bought my mother a car. I told her also when I was 5 years old, she used to drive this little putt-putt Chevrolet. We call it the putt-putt car because it always putts. It was just putt, 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 putt all down the street. And I told her one day she's going to ride a Mercedes-Benz. And so when I got my deal, I wasn't even thinking about myself, to be honest. The first thing I did was take my mom to the dealership and get her the Mercedes that she liked. And then I took them both to the neighborhood that we used to go to. And I said, all right, guys, now it's time for us to move here. And we moved into that house, same house my mom and dad still have to this day. So yeah, that was just, it's just something that I wanted to be a blessing to them because they were such a blessing to me and believe in their beliefs in me as a young kid. So I just wanted to do something special.
Incredibly special. When I made money, my grandmother was raised in foster care. And when our company had gone public, and I said to my grandmother, I said, I want to buy you whatever car you want. So go to the dealership, call me from the dealership, and I'll take care of the money from there. I'll send a wire or just put me on the phone with the manager. So I get a call a few weeks later. Randy, I got my car, super excited. Where are you? I said, I'm at the Toyota dealership on 8 Mile in Detroit. I said, because I'm from Detroit and we all grew up in Detroit. And I said, oh, okay, Nana, what kind of Toyota are you getting? She said, a Camry. And I said, Camry's an amazing car, Nana, but I told you could buy whatever car you wanted. And if you want to go to the Mercedes dealership, you go to the Mercedes dealership and you can call me from there. Randy, this is the car I want. This is the dream car. And that's what she bought, Rodney. And I ended up buying her 5 Camrys over the next 25 years. And she loved that car. And I'll tell you something funny. That first car, I went to visit. I came home for the summer. I remember it was a Detroit muggy day, 90 degrees. You could hardly breathe outside. It was so muggy. So we get in the car. It's bright red. We get in there. The car is 110 degrees inside. So turns on the car, and I'm looking for the power windows to go down because I want to get some air before the air conditioning kicked into the car. And I said, Nana, where's the power windows? I looked at the door, and there were no power windows. They were the rolling windows where you rolled it manually. I said, Nana, what's up with this? This car doesn't have power windows. I said, I know. And I asked, why not? And she said, because it was $700 more. And I said, all right, Nana. I said, I appreciate the cost conscious. And she grew up with a very hard life. Her parents abandoned her when she was 6 years old, no money, on the streets of Detroit, and said, sorry, I'm leaving. And there she was wandering around. But she definitely didn't splurge on the car, but I did get her the car that she wanted, and she was super happy about the car. It feels good to be able to do things, especially if you're a family, when you have the financial means to make a big difference in people's lives.
It is. It's a blessing, and to be a blessing in someone else's life, it's always better to give. And, so that's why we try to instill in our children, just, it's always better to give.
Let's go back. I still want to stay on the childhood subject and history for now. And I want to talk about Teddy Riley. We're going to talk about Michael Jackson in a minute. But before we do, can you tell us about the call from the payphone, the conversation you had with your dad, leaving your house at 2 a.m. for a 6-hour road trip to future recording in Virginia Beach, and waiting in an empty parking lot for 5 hours until a blue 500 SL Mercedes rolled in? And in search of excellence, how important is it to strike while the iron is hot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm doing all these local demos in South Jersey. And I think I was building a name at 14 years old as this young kid who was making music locally. So I was doing really well, actually. I was charging like $35 a demo. Some people would, get the 3-song package for $100 even. But I was doing, I was having fun learning my craft and working with others and helping them with their craft. And I worked with this group. They were called Triple Threat. And they were preparing because back then it was a big convention called the Impact Convention, a big music convention. It comes to Atlantic City every year. And they were preparing for that convention. And so they wanted to have their demo done. And they hired me to do the demo. And so their manager, Kevin Crump, played the demo for Teddy Riley because Teddy Riley was at this convention. And Teddy Riley told the manager that, and by the way, I'm the biggest Teddy Riley fan. There was no one better and more brilliant in my eyes than Teddy Riley at that time. No one. Not even Quincy at that time. Like, Quincy made me fall in love with wanting to be a producer, but Teddy Riley was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I studied him day and night. And so Kevin Crump met Teddy Riley, and he played these songs of Triple Threat for him. And Teddy Riley's response was, I think the group is just okay, but whoever did the music, tell him he's really got it. He's really special. Kevin Crump runs to a payphone, calls my house, and tells me what Teddy Riley says. I then go and tell my dad, we have to go and meet Teddy Riley. He's in Atlantic City. We got to go meet Teddy Riley. My dad talks to Kevin Crump, and Kevin Crump says, Teddy Riley's gone. He left. I go to the back of one of the albums, and it says all the songs were recorded and mixed at Future Recording Studios in Virginia Beach. I knew that his production company name was Future. So I told my dad, I said, Dad, we got to go to Virginia. We got to go to Virginia. Virginia Beach. Look, it says Virginia Beach, the studio. He goes, you don't know if Teddy Riley is at the studio? And I said, look, Dad, Bobby Brown recorded there. Everybody's everybody that Teddy Riley works with works at this studio. It must be his studio. So my dad goes, son, that's a 6-hour drive. I said, Dad, you've always said we got to strike when the iron is hot. It couldn't be any hotter right now. This guy just said that my music was great. We got to go meet him. My dad in the middle of the night said, pack up your bags. And we got in the car, the van, the church van actually, got in the church van and we went to Virginia Beach. And by the time we got there in the morning, early in the morning, there was no cars in the parking lot. We sat in the parking lot for over an hour, no cars. We left, we went to Denny's. We came back, no cars. We left, we went and checked in a hotel. And my dad is telling me the whole time, he's not here. We drove all this way. He's probably in Los Angeles and Hollywood somewhere or New York somewhere. And I said, Dad, just let's go one more time. So after we checked in the hotel, we went there, took a little nap or whatever. Came back in the afternoon, late afternoon, sat in the parking lot, and next thing you know, like 15 cars rolled up at one time. And one of the cars that rolled up was this dark blue convertible SL 500. And I seen the top was off, and I seen this bald-headed guy in the car, and it was Teddy Riley. And as he pulled into the studio, I got excited. I said, that's him. I'm so excited. And I go to get out the car, and his security guard actually kind of rushes me. Like, they didn't know who we are. And I told him I was this kid producer. And then this other guy came over by the name of Earl Thomas. He was Teddy Riley's chef. He was his cook at the studio. He was a Jamaican accent. Hey, Star, what's up, man? What's guan, man? And I said, hey, I'm a producer. Yeah, let me take you to meet Teddy. And he took me to meet Teddy. And Teddy took me in his studio and he said, play me what you got. I couldn't believe it. He literally took me in his studio and said, play me what you got. And I played him his cassette tape with these 9 tracks on it. And he listened to all of them. And as he was listening, he was loving the music and he was calling other people from outside the hallways into the studio to listen. So now it was his artists and different people were filling up the room. And he was listening. And next thing you know, Teddy was like, listen, I think you're incredible. I think you got it. If you want to come here during summer after school and hang out and help out and watch, the door is open for you. He gave me an open invitation and I took it. I took that invitation. I was back there every summer watching a master at work, studying. That's all I did was study. I would watch him and I wouldn't say a word. I would just watch and study and over and over again.
We have a summer intern program. We hire 35 kids every summer from all across the country. It's an amazing program. I spend 60 to 90 minutes a day with the interns, and it's become a thing now. We have about 1,000 applications. And it's one of the most enjoyable and rewarding things for me to do because you have the ability to change people's lives. You give them life lessons. We talk about tangible lessons, and we focus a lot about the intangibles, which often are more important than the tangibles. But I think internships are critical and can be very helpful and instrumental in people's success. Can you explain how important interning for Teddy was, and what's your view on internships in general, and how important are mentors to our success and our future?
Oh, super important to first of all, an intern, for you to be a great intern, you have to have a servant's heart. And I don't believe you can become a king without being a servant first. And so what it says is that I'm willing to do everything it takes to please someone else, to make sure that their things are running smoothly, that everything that's happening for them is running smooth. And I will put myself out there to make that happen. If they need me, if they need me to wash their car, I'll wash their car. If they need me to go pick up the food, I'll go pick up the food. If I'm not even a cook and they need me to make the food, I'll make the food. If they need me to go pick up someone, it's just, you're pretty much saying, I will do it all. I'll do whatever it takes, right? Because I want to prove that I'm ready to go to the next level. And how I prove that is by serving of others. Being a servant to others. And in that moment, while I'm serving, I'm getting the opportunity to learn, right? Because I'm watching a master at their craft. I'm watching others that are masters at their craft, and I'm enjoying the process because I'm able to learn. And anything you need me to do while I'm here, I will do it. You have to be very humble for something like that, right? And it was so rewarding to me. It taught me so much. But then it also taught me in the future when I became successful, how much interns meant for me, right? And I've had interns become my head mixers, mix the biggest songs in my career they were interns in a studio picking up food orders for us. And I'm like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with your life? I want to be a mix engineer. Cool, I'm gonna give you that shot because I see how willing and how able you are to respond to the needs that I have. So I know there's something deep down. I know you can actually go to the next level, and I want to help you get there. So internship is so important, and it's so important not only to be an intern, but to have the right mentor, right, and having a person who's willing to pour life lessons into you during those times of internship. It's really important.
I think also when you have a large group of interns, people show up, you have 35 people in the room. And what I tell everyone every summer is, I'm going to judge your performance this summer and we'll have a review at the end of the summer. And what they're really striving for is my mentorship, because I'm still in touch with some of my interns from 15 years ago. Some of them are running huge companies now. One's a centimillionaire, and nothing makes me happier than to see their success. But what I tell everybody is, the performance, it's not a competitive. We're not competing against ourselves. I'm going to tell you at the end of the summer where you were relative to the rest of the interns, just so you know where you are. But it's not, you perform yourself. I'm going to judge you based on what you do and your skill set and your work ethic and all the other things that we talk about. And it's a bell curve. We have the bottom third who just want to have my investment firm on their resume. And they're really checking in and out. They do what they're told, and they don't have they just don't have it. And if they have it, they're not showing it. Then you got the middle third, and they do a fine job. I'd grade it a 3.3 to a 3.6 or 7. But then we have a third who's the top third. And that top third earns my lifetime respect and loyalty, frankly. They are superstars. A third of them go into investment banking at Goldman Sachs. They kill it. And what the interns don't understand is that the internship is a tryout. And if you want to take advantage of it and maximize it, you should really maximize your summer. We have interns sometimes who are staying till 12, 1 in the morning. Not because I tell them to, because that's just their DNA. And I'll pick up the phone. I've called the CEO of Goldman Sachs before. I've broken a tie when they're in a competitive situation. And it's really something that a lot of interns don't understand, that you really shouldn't just phone it in. You should just work your best. What's your advice to people coming in just saying, I'm going to put my name on a resume this summer? Should they kill it no matter what, even though they want to have fun, hang out in New York City this summer with all their buds?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, they definitely should. They should give their all. I mean, you can't listen. The one thing you sometimes you can't get back is you can't get yesterday back, right? You can't get yesterday. Once yesterday is gone, it's gone. So you got to live in the moment, and you got to make sure that every moment counts. Every moment has to count. And I love that. It's interesting, right? Because I never forget being in New York, right? I was at the Hit Factory in New York, and my mix engineer, a guy by the name of Dexter Simmons, he was an intern at one of the first studios I worked at in New York. And I saw this passion in his eyes. And I said, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? He said, I want to mix. And when I was working at the studio, I would literally leave the studio every night around 8:00 at night. And I said to him, I said, hey man, I got this song. If you want to try and mix it, be my guest. And his eyes lit up, really, really. And Do you know he came to my hotel at like 2:00 in the morning with the cassette of the mix that night that I told him that? And from there, I never looked back. I started letting him mix everything and work with me on everything. He mixed The Boy's Mind by Brandy and Monica. He mixed Angel in My Mind. He mixed Tony Braxton, He Wasn't Man Enough. So many, Jennifer Lopez, If You Have My Love, so many classic records he's mixed for me. But one thing that I want to share was we had a session in New York one day, and we were working at the Hit Factory, and it was this big room, like you look through the glass, the booth. And literally the booth was so big. This is where Mariah Carey actually, that video that she had with Boyz II Men, it was that studio. And it's this big booth. And I never forget, we were in the booth and there was a guy, he was an intern. So it was me and my engineer, the former intern, and this guy, his name was Buzz or something like that. And he was to the left, Bud or something. And he was to the left of me. And my engineer said, I need the mic to go, whatever. He just said something. All I know is he ran so fast. He didn't walk. He ran out the door to the booth, adjusted the microphone, and in less than 15 seconds was back, sitting right back where he was. And my engineer looked at me, he said, whoa, I've never seen somebody move that fast. Right? And I say, well, people with passion move that fast. I said, that's how you were. About 10 years later, I'm with Jimmy Iovine, and I'm in his office about to go into a Beats by Dre headphone meeting. And you know who was the head marketing for Beats by Dre? That same guy that ran through that booth. I bumped into him 10 years. I said, I know you from somewhere. He goes, yeah, I was the intern in the studio. And I said, you would have got it ran really fast. That was me. And now, what are you doing? I'm running marketing for Jimmy for Beats by Dre. If you have it, you have it. And if you have the passion, you'll make it. And you have to show the people that you're willing to go, no matter whatever you have, whatever it is, you go all in, all out in that moment, because you can't get that moment back. It's gone. Once it leaves, it's gone. So you have to prove yourself in the moment that I'm here because I want to make it. I'm not here just to have fun. Yeah, I can have fun anytime. I'm not here just to have fun. I want to prove that I can be the best that I can be. That's it.
I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but before we jump back in, I want to know if you've ever thought about what you need to do to reach the next level of success in your life. Over the last 25 years, I've been an advisor to more than 50 companies. I've invested nearly 100, including Google, Lyft, and Seagate, and I also co-founded a company that today is worth more than $15 billion. I've been incredibly blessed in my journey, and at this stage in my life, I want to give back. I want to share the lessons I've learned so you can reach incredible success way faster than I did. In my own journey, I've learned that having the right mentor is a massive advantage to achieving our goals. I'm hugely passionate about mentoring others, and I'm looking for a few hungry entrepreneurs who are excited to take action on their journey to incredible future success. So if that's you, I've got an opportunity. In the description of this video, there's a link where you can apply to work with me. All you need to do is answer a few simple questions, and if you're a good fit, my team will reach out so we can build a game plan together. All right, now let's get back to the video.
So you had a great mentor, an internship in Teddy Riley, and he said to you in one of your sessions that he wants you to meet Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson was the guy you were listening to in a mall in Canton, Ohio, that lit you on fire. And here you are, less than 10 years later, and you've got a king in the music business telling you he wants you to meet Michael Jackson. Then you get a call to come over to Carol Bayer Sager, who was married to Bob Daly, I think at the time, the chairman of Warner Brothers, and to come on over. Michael's here and he wants to meet you. Walk us through what on earth you're thinking when someone says, I want to introduce you to Michael Jackson. And what are you thinking when you meet him and you're pulling up to Carol's house, knowing he's there to meet you and possibly work with you? The biggest superstar in the world, perhaps ever, at that point in time.
Okay, so it starts like this. Teddy Riley says, I'm going to take you to meet Michael Jackson someday. He said that to myself and my father. I want to take you to meet Michael Jackson someday. And of course, you don't, when you're in it, you don't really believe that's real, right? You just, okay, this guy is saying that because I'm, here and I'm working with him and he knows I love Michael just as much as he does. But then reality kicks in. And all I know is one day Teddy says, everybody pack up. We have to go to New York. And there was 3 Quest vans outside the studio. I didn't know what was going on, to be completely honest. We never went anywhere before. And all I know is Teddy said, I want you to be in the van with me. So I was in the van with him and his driver, and then his brothers and other people were in other vans. And we're going to New York. And the whole time from Virginia Beach to New York, all Teddy played was Michael Jackson. I'm in the back seat and I'm starting to think, oh, wow, we're going to New York because of Michael Jackson, because I had been around Teddy so much as an intern, and I knew that whenever he was going to work on a project, he studied the person's music right before it was time to work with them. And so he was listening really with intense ears the whole way in the middle of the night going to New York. When we got to New York, we checked into the hotel. I went to my room. It was like 2:00 in the morning. And next thing you know, the phone rings in the room and Teddy says, he calls me little bro, come down to the lobby. So I'm like, man, I'm tired. I want to go to sleep. Come down to the lobby. And he goes, we got to go to the studio. And we go down the street to the Hit Factory. And next thing you know, we walked into the studio and there was Michael Jackson. And Teddy introduced me to Michael Jackson and said, you're going to work with this kid someday. And Michael kind of giggled, like, his little soft laugh. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to work with you someday, Michael. I'm going to work with you someday. I was in awe. It was just a crazy moment. And that was it. I went back to the hotel and we stayed in New York for like 2 weeks. And Teddy was working with Michael and I was in another room working on other projects for Teddy. And that was it. Saw Michael one time and that was it. Fast forward a few years later, I'm at my parents' home, the home that I bought them. I fell asleep on my mother's couch and I had this dream that I was pulling up to a studio and it was all glass. And in the glass was this guy with the red shirt on and a derby hat. And it was Michael Jackson. I woke up and I told my mother and father this dream. I said, I just had this dream that Michael Jackson was in the glass in the window of this studio and I was pulling up to work with him. And it was so vivid and so real. Not much after that, not much longer, the phone rings and this lady, Carol Bayer Sager's on the phone. And she's calling me because at that time I had the biggest song out. It was Say My Name by Destiny's Child. And she says, is this Rodney Jerkins? I said, yeah. I didn't even know who she was, to be completely honest. Like I heard her name, but I didn't know the song she wrote with Burt Bacharach and Reach Out and Touch Someone's Hand, all these great songs, classic songs. And we started talking and she says, I want you to come to my house and work with me and Michael Jackson. And I'm like, I'm choked up. I'm like, what? I just had this dream. This can't be real, but it is real. And I said, when? And she goes, I don't know yet, but once I talk to Michael, I'll let you know. And Randall, I jumped on a plane immediately. I checked myself into a hotel and I just stayed in the hotel patiently waiting for her to call me and let me know when we were going to work. And a few days later, she called me and she goes, do you think you can come out here, fly out here tomorrow? And I said, I'm already here. I said, I'm already here. And she said, okay, well, tomorrow we're going to have a session come to my house at noon. And so she gave me her address. And as I'm going up her driveway, she has this guest house to the left, which is a studio. And through the glass, I see a red shirt, just like the dream I had 4 days before that. It was Michael Jackson. And I went in their house and I met Michael again, told him that I had same guy that met him with Teddy Riley. I started playing the piano for him and we started creating from that day. That was in February of 1999.
You have a lot of stories about Michael, and I want to focus on just a couple of them. And I want to talk about, let's start with the importance of work ethic in our career and the importance of it to our success. Can you tell us about what kind of stuff he was doing in the studio and the outfit changes he would make and getting called to his hotel room in the middle of the night to start rehearsing with him? And there was a whole team of people there at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, the whole process of working with Michael was much different from any other artist that I worked with. Way different. The intensity of working with him was on just to a different level. He's a perfectionist. He gets lost and exhausted in the music and the rhythms. There would be he would literally have to. I would have to order several Hanes t-shirts for every session because he would dance so intensely in the booth that he would sweat out the shirt, literally sweat out the shirt. And I would have to have other shirts ready for him. So he would literally change into another shirt, keep recording, sweat out that shirt. That's how intense his work ethic was. Not just him being at the hotel 3 o'clock in the morning for rehearsals, but him calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning, asking to hear what I worked on during the day. I mean, it was like nonstop, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Play what you worked on today. And I'm like, really, Michael? Really? Can you really hear this over the phone? He said, play it. And I'm playing it over the phone and he would tell me to turn the hi-hat down 2 dBs, turn the snare up 1 dB. Over the phone, he's telling me this. It blew my mind. And he was always right. That was the other part about working with him. He was always right. Like, it wasn't like he was just saying it. He actually really felt like the hi-hat should come down 2 dBs and the snare should come up. And it was always right. He was like right on point. It was just a magical experience for me, like to work with him in those years. We worked together for a good 2.5 to 3 years straight. And it was beautiful. Like, I spent a lot of time with him and flew with him and worked in several studios, got a chance to hang out at Neverland and hang out with his family, and just one of the greatest moments of my life. Greatest memories I've ever made in my life was working with Michael, for sure.
You guys were extremely close. Can you share with us a Michael Jackson story that nobody else has ever heard or knows about?
Yeah, I don't know if people have heard this story, but I saved his life once. And I was just telling my son this story the other day because we were at Neverland and Michael, he said he wanted to go out four-wheeling one day. So me, my brother, one of my writers, LaShawn Daniels, and Michael, we all got on four-wheelers and we started riding these four-wheelers. And Neverland, I don't know if you know, but Neverland is up in the mountains and it's miles and miles of property. And we're riding and it's starting to get late and we're way up in the mountains. And I said to Michael, I think we should turn around. Michael really didn't keep track of time. And I said, I think we should turn around. Like, I could tell it's getting late and we're far away. I don't even know where we are, to be honest, this trail. And so as we went to go turn around, Michael's wheel on his four-wheeler caught a rock, and literally in 1 second, his four-wheeler was leaning over this cliff. And I got off of my four-wheeler and I grabbed him. And my brother grabbed his four-wheeler. And we're all looking down and all we saw was a cliff down. And Michael said, "Oh, Rod, you saved my life. You saved my life." It's true. If he would have just moved 1 inch, he literally would have been over that cliff. He literally would have been over that cliff. And so that was one of the craziest moments that I've ever experienced, but also it built some type of bond between him and I. Because after that, I felt like our relationship went to a completely different level. The trust factor and just the loyalty factor of our relationship went to just an incredible level after that moment.
How difficult was it for you to watch Michael be accused of molesting young children? And what, if you're comfortable sharing, what kind of conversations were you having during that period of time?
It was super uncomfortable because I was around him so much, and I was actually around him with his children, around him at the time when there was people that he knew, other families that had children that would go to Neverland just to watch movies, and or kids that were sick that had illnesses that he built a certain type of room in his theater just for those types of children that couldn't actually be around other kids, like almost like a hospital room, but in the theater to watch their favorite movie. So I was around him and I saw the heart that he had for people and how giving he was, and would have conversations, when things would pop up on the news, I would actually see him cry. And he would actually say, look at the monster they're trying to portray me as. Look who they want me to become. That's not who I am. And they know it, and I know it. And I would sit back and I knew it too. And I would be like, wow, this is crazy. Like the picture they were trying to paint to everyone. And I was there the whole time with them and learning so much from this guy and seeing the kind of person he was. Guy would literally give the shoes and shirt off, give the shirt off his back, shoes off his feet to anybody. I mean, most giving person I've ever met. Never wanted to hurt anybody, never wanted to hurt a child ever. Was just a kind person that really cared about humanity as a whole. And in a time where people wrote songs about dancing and people wrote songs about love, if you really look, Michael was writing songs about humanity. He was writing songs like Man in the Mirror, Look at Yourself. He's writing songs about Heal the World. He's writing songs like Earth Song. He was writing songs like The Lost Children, writing songs called Speechless, writing songs called We Are the World. Like, this guy was writing songs that no one else was writing. He was writing songs about humanity because I really believe he sincerely wanted the earth to be a better place. And he believed that, it started with, children and us being, having the heart of children, the innocent heart of children. So it hurt me when he was going through all of those allegations. In fact, in 2003, Michael called myself and my father and asked where we were. And we just so happened to be in a studio in Los Angeles. And Chris Tucker, who's a good friend of mine, just happened to be there. And Michael said that he wanted prayer because he was on trial. And he drove all the way from Neverland all the way down to Los Angeles, which was like a 2-hour plus drive, just for us to pray for him. And, and my dad and I and Chris Tucker, we prayed for him, and we just prayed that God would give him the strength and give him peace through those, whatever, he was going through at that time. It was wearing him out, wearing him down, but we believe that God would give him strength. And so, yeah, I felt very uncomfortable, but I always knew in my heart of hearts that he was, innocent, and I stand by that statement, and, I believe that.
The first concert I went to, I was 5 years old, and it was the Jackson 5. And Michael Jackson, I believe at the time, was 5 years old. And that was the first show I ever saw in my life. It was great at the Pine Knob Music Theater in Detroit. I don't know if you've been there or not, but it was a great show. I still remember it. You always remember your first concert. It was my first stadium. It was an outdoor amphitheater. And I thought, gosh, look at that whole band, but that little kid's amazing. He's my age. Look at what he's doing. We've talked about Michael's work ethic, and I don't think a lot of people would know that at 3 a.m, he's got his whole dance team in his hotel suite working out songs and choreographing at 3 a.m. One thing that has led to some of my success is something I call extreme preparation, is preparing more than everybody else in the room, being the most prepared person in the room, where if someone spends 5 hours for something, I may spend 40 hours for something. Can you tell us some examples of extreme preparation in your career and how out preparing everybody else, and maybe give some specifics on that? And then I also want to talk about your thoughts on Beyonce and Lady Gaga.
Randall, we're just alike. I am just like you in that regards of extreme preparation. I've been doing it since as a teenager all the way to now. I take every project serious, the same as if, whether it's Michael Jackson or a new artist. I prepare like you would not believe. In fact, I tell my son who plays golf, I say, never get ready, be ready. We don't have time to get ready anymore. You got to be ready. You never know when that call is going to happen. When I was working with Michael, I think that's why he liked working with me so much, because I was beyond prepared for him. When I got that call officially after I met him at Carol Bayer's, and he said, I want you to come work with me in LA. He said, what do you need? And I told him, and my wife, even we joke about this to this day, I will spend days, months just on sound design alone, just on sound design, preparing for whatever I think the next quarter or the next year looks like in my eyes of music. I will spend so much time, and all my proteges know this about me. I will spend just getting the right sounds together for projects. I believe in being overly prepared for whatever you're going to work whatever artist you're going to work for. Because to me, it's the way. My job is to, whoever I work with, my job is to take them to their next level. If they're already at a huge level, they need to go further. If they're new artists, we need to get them out and become stars or superstars. So in order for that to happen, first I need to study. I need to study, and I need to know who it is that I'm creating for. I want to know everything about them. Not just their singing ability or their performance ability, but I want to know everything about them, their life and what's going on in their life. And then I want to be able to prepare for when that time comes and be ready to just walk in and deliver what I know is the best version of me for them. So I agree. I'm with you 200%. I'm always overly prepared for whatever it is, whatever presentation that I have to make. In fact, I'm sometimes too prepared, because I played 60 tracks for Michael when I met with him. He said no one has ever walked in a room and played that many tracks for me. I was beyond prepared to work with Michael.
I don't think there's any such thing as being too prepared. The fact that Michael Jackson, who could work with anybody he wants to and did work with whoever he wanted to, told you that you're the most prepared person and prepared more songs than anybody, is a statement within a statement. And I think I do a lot of coaching and mentoring, Rodney. And I tell people all the time, be the most prepared person ever to walk in that room, show people that you're prepared, and whether you achieve a successful outcome at that specific moment or not, the probability you do is going to be substantially higher if you do. But that person, it may not happen that exact moment. That person is going to remember you for the rest of their life. And you're going to get another at-bat at some point, either because they're going to proactively reach out to you, or you're going to come back and have another bite at that apple. And I've been coaching this and preaching this, and it usually falls on deaf ears, but it has 100% success rate long-term. You can easily be the most prepared person that someone has ever met.
That's right.
You could have stopped at 30 songs, right?
That's
you
right.
could have stopped at 40. What does the average person do? And in that situation, you're going to meet with someone who's great. It could be Michael or Rihanna, or someone who's not, frankly. But how many songs are people preparing when they go in for a meeting like that on average?
Five to seven easily. Yeah, 5 to 7 easily. If they got 10, then maybe 10. Yeah, that's the average.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're 7 to 10x, and it's was the investment. So how much extra time was that in terms of hours? Is that another 100 hours, 200 hours of work?
For me, for what?
When you prepared 60 songs, how long did that take you?
Yeah, probably a couple 100 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that was one of the best investments you ever made in your life, return on investment.
Of course. I mean, we're talking about Michael Jackson. You're talking about me working with Michael Jackson. So yeah, for sure.
So talk about Beyonce and her work ethic and Lady Gaga. I think you said one's a little higher than the other. And then you've also said Beyonce is one of the most beautiful people you've ever met in your life. I'm sure people would love to know more about Beyonce.
I think Beyonce was probably the closest person with the same type of drive to Michael Jackson that I work with. Very similar in perfection and reaching and striving for perfection. And knowing exactly what she wanted, very in control of what her performance and everything must look like. I remember working with her on this song called Deja Vu that I did with her and Jay-Z. And I remember her talking to the directors, and they were coming to the studio, and her explaining her vision and to these people what kind of clothes she wanted to wear and everything. Like, she just was really hands-on about how it had to look, how the visuals had to be. I just think that, every once in a generation, an artist comes around that has a different type of passion to want to be so much greater than even the artist that they looked up to, right? It's not just about making it anymore. It's not just about getting a record deal, but it's actually achieving something so much greater. So if it's Michael Jackson saying, I looked up to James Brown, then I need to be better than James Brown, right? If it's Beyonce saying, I looked up to Aretha Franklin, I don't know, whoever her person was, I need to be better than that. And I need to reach these goals. So I saw a lot of similarities between Beyonce and Michael. Saw a lot of similarities. And it was just amazing. She was amazing. She's an amazing artist to work with. Just amazing, like, because the one thing you do when you work with someone like a Michael Jackson or Beyonce, you know that they would deliver the performance of the song, right? You're not just doing a song and the performance is going to fall flat. You can almost bet the house on it that the performance, if they perform it live or on the Grammys or visual or whatever, it was going to be incredible. It was going to be a movie. A video wouldn't just be a normal video. It would be like a movie. The performance would be like, whoa, mind-boggling performance. You just know that. You just know that with those type of artists.
What does Beyonce do different than someone else does? What's the difference?
It's preparation. It goes back to what you said. I had a chance to talk to Kobe Bryant before he passed away. And Kobe Bryant told me a story about Michael Jackson. And he's told me a story about when he first came into the league as a rookie, and everybody was saying he had the Michael Jordan type tendencies. He said Michael Jackson called him and he asked him, do you want to be the best? And Kobe said, yeah, I want to be the best. He goes, what time do you go to gym to practice every morning? He said, I usually get there like 6:30 and I stay there till like 8:30. And Michael said, you should be getting there right now at 3:30 and staying till 9:30. He said, you can't become the best just practicing 2 hours. You need to practice. You need to be the first one to get there and the last one to leave. You need to be overly prepared for battle. And Kobe said when he heard that from Michael, he got to the gym at 3 the next morning and he stayed till 9 o'clock. And he said that, you know, he would prepare. Michael told him to do the one move that he wanted to master for 6 hours straight. Don't worry about doing a bunch of different moves. He said, I practiced the moonwalk for 6 hours straight until I mastered it. Whatever shot you want to shoot, that you want to take, master it. Beyonce was the same way. Same exact way. Rehearsals, you know, the first one there, the last to leave type of the attitude, the same mentality. I call it the killer instinct, right? The ability to just outwork anybody. When you're ready and you're willing to outwork anyone on your own team. On your own team, not just the competitors, but the ones on your own team, right? If you're outworking them, then you know, even with the success, she was still outworking everybody. She was still spending hours and hours and hours and hours in the studio, and hours and hours and hours and hours at the rehearsal studio. I mean, she was preparing for who she is now ever since she was a little girl. Her father had her preparing as a young girl for these moments that we are now seeing now.
This episode of In Search of Excellence is brought to you by Sandee.com, SANDEE.com. We're a Yelp for beaches and have created the world's most comprehensive beach resource by cataloging more than 100 categories of information for every beach in the world, more than 100,000 beaches in 212 countries. Sandee.com provides beachgoers around the world with detailed, comprehensive, and easy-to-use information to help them plan their perfect beach getaway at home and abroad, and to make sure you're never disappointed by a beach visit again. Plan the perfect beach trip today by visiting Sandee.com. That's www.sandee.com. The link is in our show notes. Stay Sandee, my friends. Are you looking for your next great gift to surprise a friend, colleague, or loved one? Bliss Beaches makes the perfect gift. This best-selling bright and beautiful coffee table book by Randall Kaplan features stunning drone photography from exotic beach locations around the world. It's the perfect housewarming gift, a great addition to any home or office, and a fun and creative alternative to bringing a bottle of wine to somebody's house for dinner. Bliss Beaches is available for purchase on Amazon, where it has glowing reviews and a 5-star rating. Get your next amazing gift and order a copy of Bliss Beaches by clicking the link in our show notes. You mentioned something called first in, last out. I've been calling this FILO for the last 20 years, and it is a very simple concept that if anybody does it, it's going to lead to great success in their career. You're the first person in, you're the last person to leave, and you're putting in the hours. Great things are going to happen to you. I think your career is so fascinating. I mean, I'm sitting back. I love music, and I thought, God, I'd love to hang out with Michael. I'd love to hang out with Beyonce and Lady Gaga. I'd love to meet them someday. I'd love to just go have a beer with them or have dinner with them. I mean, for you, it's no problem, right? Whitney Houston was coming to church with you and your family, and you're hanging out with all these cool people. But I love Lady Gaga. What's Lady Gaga really like?
She's awesome. She really, Lady Gaga, I still think about Lady Gaga all the time because she gave my son, when my son was born, she came to my home and bought a teddy bear for him. So I always think about that moment. And, pre Lady Gaga, being, this big artist to the world, she was just in the studio. We were writing for other people, actually. Jimmy Iovine wanted us to write for the Pussycat Dolls and different artists. So her and I were just working, and it was just something special about Gaga. We'd be in there, and I remember telling Jimmy, I'm like, Jimmy, I know we're working on these other artists, but Gaga is special. She just was so special. And I used to tell her all the time, I say, Gaga, you're going to be a superstar. And she says, I know. I will have nothing less for myself. She really believed that she was going to be like the biggest pop star in the world. She really believed it. Like always was, she would literally say it all the time. And I got to tell you, it was just an honor and privilege to work with her because I got to know her as a person as well. And she was really a sweet person, really sweet.
You have amazing relationships. Your reputation in the music business is you're one of the nicest guys in the business. You're also known to be a man of faith. and you're working in an industry sometimes where there's a lot of conflict, sometimes there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of bad words. A lot of your friends are putting some bad words in songs that I don't listen to, and I know they're the number one or top 10 top most popular songs on the planet. How do you deal with that conflict? And then can you, between your faith and some of the bad things that happen and some of these just terrible lyrics, and like you talk to, you're also known as someone to give advice to people going through hard times. You advised Chris Brown when he was dealing with assault issues with Rihanna. And you talked to Justin Bieber as well when he was going through some things as a young kid and doing some immature shit. So talk to us about both those things.
Well, one, I'm proud of all my songs. I'm proud that you can type Rodney Jerkins up in Spotify or Apple Music and, however many songs that pop up, you won't find too many songs with derogatory language or just, songs that don't reflect who I am morality wise. I'm proud of that, number one. I hate some of the music that's out here today and what it's saying and what it's teaching our youth. I hate it with a passion, and I will do everything in my power to combat it with the music that I make in the future. Number three, people are humans, right? And I was taught that you can't be forgiven unless you know how to forgive. And and when I think about, some of the pressure that a lot of these artists, you want to be an artist, you want to make it big, but as soon as you make it big, now you got the spotlight is on you, right? And everything that you do, everybody's watching everything you do. And I just think a lot of artists, Chris Brown, Justin Bieber, Britney Spears, so many artists that I work with that have went through some horrible, troubling times where they've been hurt or they've hurt others. But they're human. They are. And I've always wanted to take the big brother role and speak life into people, not speak death into people, but speak life and help people to understand, that we all go through things, but there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel with God's help. So I've always just, I've made myself available in our industry. I've made myself available to be there for people. And I think, I've built a reputation where managers and A&Rs, different people call me when they need their artist when they need someone to talk to. They'll reach out to me and ask me, can I make a trip? I went on tour with Bieber just to kind of help life coach him. And I just made myself, I flew down to Orlando when the Chris Brown thing happened and spent time with him. I just stopped what I'm doing and stopped producing for a second. Because what is producing if you're not producing good life, and pouring great fertilizer on seeds, right? Because that's what they are. These artists sometimes are just young seeds that need to grow. And they haven't been there long enough to have the wisdom, so they make childish mistakes because they're still young and they're still learning. So I'm happy to be in a position I'm in that I can be trusted to help people out.
So now you're a legend in the music business. I know you may not think of yourself that way, but you are. Collectively, the records you produced have sold over 1 billion copies. I'm not even sure what the number is. Do you happen to know what the number is?
I don't know. I just know I got there's this app that they tell you how many streams you're at on it, and I thought it was off. They told me I was over 25 billion streams now, and I was like, I got to be close to 50. I didn't believe it. I told them to go check the data again, and I think we're well past that number.
50 billion streams of songs that you have produced. That's
at least.
Okay.
At least.
So 10 years old, you hear Michael Jackson. Now you're a legend in the music business. You've worked with everyone, and everyone wants to work with you. What are you going to do to the kid who tracks you down and gives you, there aren't cassette tapes anymore, but gives you a USB stick with his music on it? Are you going to let that kid stop you? Is your security guy going to let that kid through?
100%.
Are you going to listen to that music?
Yeah, I always listen. That's the beautiful thing about like how I find talent. I nurture talent. You know, it's not always about yourself. It's about paying it forward. You know, there's so many producers that you may not know of that are like blowing up right now, that have produced for Bruno Mars, that have produced for Ariana Grande, and they all come from under my tutelage, the same way I came from under Teddy Riley's tutelage. So I always believe in paying it forward. I always listen to the content that's sent to me, that is sent my way, because you just never know where that next diamond is, right? You never know. And I like to stay connected to talent and young talent. So yeah, I'm always looking and I'm always listening.
So let's go back. You're on a talent show at school, and your dad's not letting you listen to any rap music, and you dress up as Big Daddy Kane, and you perform the rap music, and years later, the doorbell rings, and who's at your front door? What was that moment like?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Big Daddy Kane. He had a song called Smooth Operator, and I performed it in our middle school talent show with my best friend Buzz, and they all knew that I love Big Daddy Kane. I used to want to dress like him. In fact, my sister Shireen, her boyfriend had this MCM outfit, and it was the same outfit that Big Daddy Kane wore, and I begged him for that outfit, and it was way big. I couldn't even wear it, but he gave it to me, and I wore it at the talent show. And I was a real big fan of Big Daddy Kane, and not too long ago, he showed up at my house, and I met him for the first time, and I recited some of his rhymes from back in the day for him, and it was just it was an amazing moment to know that, you know, someone else that I looked up to so much, you know, that I had a chance to meet him in person and share some moments with him.
Why is How Deep Is Your Love your favorite song? For those people who don't know, I'm talking about the Bee Gees song, How Deep Is Your Love, which is a tremendous song. I love that. When I read that about you, I was surprised to hear that, given everyone you've worked with. So my question is, and I should do a better job rephrasing that. You've worked with the most famous musicians in the world, and I'm curious why the Bee Gees, who I absolutely love, Saturday Night Fever, one of the best soundtracks of all time, why is that song your favorite song?
I just think it's just a well put together song from the beginning to end, melodically, the way it's structured, the chord progressions that I play all the time, those chords. It's just the way the harmonies are crafted in the song. It's probably one of the most easy listening songs I've ever heard in my life. And it's a song that, you know, you can never get tired of. I've listened to the song for 30 plus years now, and I'm still not tired of it. In fact, I go to it often when there's a certain mood that I'm trying to be in creatively. If I'm trying to be in some of a more of a mellow, smooth creation mood, I'll go and listen to that song. It's just one of the greatest songs. It is. It really is for me. And there's a lot of great songs. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great songs that I love. But for me, that's my favorite song to listen to. My favorite.
I want to talk about money for a second. We talked about it at the beginning. You made a lot of money at a very young age. I mean, to have a $1.8 million deal when you're 17 years old is insane. You're not seeing athletes. I mean, today you're seeing athletes doing that, but I mean, you're in the 1% of 1% of 1%ers. I know you've made a lot of money throughout the years. And I also know a lot of wannabe musicians. They want to be famous. And of course, there's a flip side to being famous, right? You can't go to the grocery store anymore. So that's a whole nother thing. But a lot of people are very motivated by money. So in the music, and I know a lot of people in the music business, you know way more than me, but people spend a lot of money in the music business. A lot of people are very flashy. They're drawn by the money. They're addicted to the money. They spend a lot of money. Where should money rate as a factor in terms of what we're doing in our life and our careers?
I don't think you should ever chase money. I think, you know, the hip hop culture specifically has made money too much of an idol, and has made it where if you're not flashy, then you didn't make it. Right? I never forget. I'll tell you a little quick story. I never forget riding an elevator with Pete Diddy one time, back when he was Puffy, and he was trying to sign me, and I was 18 years old. And he asked me what kind of car that I have. Now, mind you, I'm 18 years old. I have a Lexus GS 300. That's a pretty good car, I would think, right? It's a nice car, right? He says to me, well, you're not doing it unless you have a Benz. He had put in my mindset that unless you have a Benz or a Bentley, then you're not even successful. And I think, you know, it's sad that the hip hop culture makes you feel that unless you are flashy and have all these certain amount of diamonds and certain amount of expensive cars with things that you put on the cars that aren't worth a dime right after you take it off the lot. If you put all these extra things on your car, you're losing the value of the actual car that you took off the lot. But they don't teach you that. I think it's sad. I think, you know, more important than the money is you should be building your brand. Because if you build your brand correctly, the money will come. The money will come. You don't have to chase it. If you make great material and your music is great, or whatever craft you're in, doesn't have to be music. If whatever you do is great, the money will come. The money will chase you. But get away from me, money. Get away from me. It will literally chase you, because if you're great in your craft, I really believe that if you're great at what you do, then the money and other things will come.
Before we finish today, I want to go ahead and ask some more open-ended questions. I call this part of my podcast, Fill in the Blank to Excellence. Are you ready to play?
Sure.
The biggest lesson I've learned in my life is?
Trust God always.
My number one professional goal is?
To own the number one publishing company.
My number one personal goal is?
To make it to heaven.
My biggest regret is?
Not marrying my wife when I first met her. I waited 4 years too late.
I love that answer. The one thing I've dreamed of doing for a long time but haven't done is?
Make a movie.
But you're going to make a movie, right?
Yes, soon, very soon.
If you could go back in time, the one piece of advice I'd give my 21-year-old self is?
Don't stop believing in you.
If you could meet one person in the world, who would it be?
My 8-year-old son, Royal. He's the coolest. Yeah.
If you could work with one artist who you have not worked with before, who would it be?
Adele.
The one question you wish I had asked you is?
What are you currently working on?
What are you currently working on?
I have the number one album out with SZA for 10 weeks straight now.
Congrats. What's coming after SZA?
I'm working on my own documentary. I can't say it's coming right after SZA because I'm still working on it. So I think it's going to be at least a year out.
Is this going to be a documentary about your life?
Yes. Yes.
That's going to be awesome. Rodney, I want to thank you for taking the time today, for being a guest on In Search of Excellence. I've been a huge fan for a long time. I was super stoked when Miguel Solano, shout out to him, said, hey, I want to have Rodney Jerkins on your show. And I said, oh, I'd love to have Rodney on my show. You're a legend. I love your music. I heard you're an amazing person, which you are. And I want to thank you deeply for being a guest.
Thank you, Rand. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.